The early 18th century, often hailed as the Golden Age of piracy, was a tumultuous period when the seas became a stage for some of history's most notorious figures, as the economic and political conditions of the time created a perfect storm for piracy to flourish. This was an era marked by the decline of powerful European empires, the growing demand for transatlantic trade, and the vulnerabilities of merchant shipping routes that connected the old world with the new. And it was during this time that Edward Ned Lowe emerged as one of the most brutal pirates ever to prowl the Atlantic. Lowe, who earned a reputation for unparalleled savagery, was a product of the harsh circumstances that defined his era, a man shaped by poverty, loss, and rebellion. Born around 1690 in the Westminster district of London, Lowe grew up in one of the city's poorest and most crime-ridden areas, where survival often depended on cunning and brute force. Westminster, though home to the affluent members of Parliament and the aristocracy, also contained some of the most squalid slums in England, where disease, hunger, and lawlessness were rampant. Lowe's family, known for their involvement in theft and petty crime, provided him with few opportunities for a better life. And from a young age, he became familiar with the dangers of London's streets. As a boy, he gambled and fought with servants and footmen from the House of Commons, honing a quarrelsome nature and a quick temper that would later define his actions as a pirate. By the time Lowe reached adulthood, England was undergoing significant changes, many of which contributed to the rise of piracy. The War of Spanish Succession from 1701 to 1714 had created a surplus of unemployed sailors, many of whom turned to piracy after finding themselves abandoned by the very navies they had once served. At the same time, the vast expansion of colonial trade routes created abundant targets for raiders, as merchant ships laden with valuable goods such as gold, sugar, and tobacco sailed across the Atlantic with little protection. For men like Lowe, who had few prospects on land, the allure of the sea and the promise of wealth it offered proved irresistible. In the early 1710s, Lowe crossed the Atlantic and settled in Boston, Massachusetts, a bustling colonial port that was quickly becoming a center of commerce and trade in New England. In Boston, Lowe attempted to live a more stable and lawful life, working as a shipbrigger and marrying Eliza Marble, a local woman with whom he started a family. For a time, Lowe appeared to have left behind his troubled past, but tragedy struck in 1719 when Eliza died during childbirth, leaving Lowe alone and embittered. Her death shattered his fragile attempt at a settled life and marked a turning point that would lead him to embrace the lawless and violent path for which he would later become infamous. In 1721, Lowe joined a logwood cutting expedition in the Bay of Honduras, a trade that was both dangerous and grueling, but offered the potential for decent pay. Logwood, used to create valuable dyes, was a highly sought-after commodity, and the industry attracted many desperate men willing to endure harsh conditions for a chance at profit. However, the combination of tough work, poor treatment by captains, and the ever-present threat of attack from rival ships or local privateers often made such voyages volatile. During one such expedition, Lowe's infamous temper flared when a dispute over pay with his captain escalated into a violent confrontation, and in a moment of rage, Lowe attempted to shoot the captain but accidentally killed a fellow sailor, an act that led to him and several companions being cast adrift as punishment. Stranded and furious, Lowe and his companions commandeered a small sloop, marking the beginning of his career as a pirate. At the time, piracy was reaching its peak in the Americas, with infamous figures such as Blackbeard, Charles Vane, and Bartholomew Roberts terrorizing merchant shipping routes. Lowe, however, quickly distinguished himself not just for his daring, but for the sheer cruelty with which he conducted his raids. His early exploits involved targeting poorly defended merchant ships, and with each success, his crew grew in size and confidence, attracting men who shared his appetite for violence and plunder. Within months, Lowe had become a formidable force, capturing ships and amassing wealth while spreading fear across the Atlantic. What made Lowe particularly infamous was his approach to piracy, which was characterized by extreme brutality that shocked even his fellow outlaws. Unlike many pirates who relied on intimidation to achieve their goals, Lowe often resorted to gruesome acts of torture to extract information or exact revenge on those who resisted him. His victims were frequently mutilated, with their ears, noses, or lips cut off, and sometimes forced to eat their own severed flesh before being killed. These horrific acts not only satisfied Lowe's sadistic tendencies, but also served to spread his terrifying reputation, ensuring that his name would be whispered in fear wherever he sailed. By 1722, Lowe had established himself as one of the most successful and feared pirates of his time, commanding a fleet of several ships, including his heavily armed flagship, the Fancy. His operations spanned the Caribbean, the eastern seaboard of North America, and even parts of Europe, as he targeted merchant vessels carrying valuable cargoes of gold, textiles, and other goods. Lowe's fleet was known for its ruthlessness, often burning captured ships after looting them to prevent their use by rivals or authorities. These tactics, while effective, earned him the enmity of powerful governments and trading companies, which began to view him as a significant threat to commerce and order. The golden age of piracy, however, was beginning to draw to a close as European powers intensified their efforts to stamp out piracy in the Americas. The British Navy, in particular, launched numerous campaigns to capture or kill prominent pirates, and Lowe soon found himself in their sights. In June 1723, his fleet encountered the British warship HMS Greyhound off the coast of Block Island, sparking a fierce naval battle that resulted in the capture of one of his ships, the Ranger, along with many of its crew. While Lowe managed to escape aboard the Fancy, the captured pirates were taken to Newport, Rhode Island, where they were swiftly tried, convicted, and executed in a highly publicized display meant to deter others from pursuing lives of piracy. Although Lowe escaped the battle, the encounter marked the beginning of his decline. His increasingly erratic and violent behavior began to alienate his crew, and according to some accounts, he even murdered one of his own lieutenants during an argument, further eroding the loyalty of his men. Eventually, his crew mutinied and abandoned him, setting him adrift in a small boat which sealed his fate. The exact circumstances of his death remain a mystery, with some historians suggesting that he was rescued by a French ship and executed in Martinique, while others believe he perished alone at sea, a fittingly grim end for a man whose life had been defined by chaos and brutality. Edward Lowe's story, though undeniably grim, is a reflection of the harsh realities of the time in which he lived, when poverty, desperation, and the collapse of social order drove many men to lives of crime. While other pirates, such as Blackbeard and Captain Kidd, have been romanticized in popular culture, Lowe remains a symbol of unrestrained savagery and the darker side of piracy. His legacy endures as a cautionary tale of the lengths to which desperation and vengeance can drive a man, and his name remains etched in history as one of the most feared figures of the golden age of piracy.